UFC Fight Night Atlanta, Joaquin Buckley versus Kamaru Usman just took place hours ago. Kamaru Usman was successful in his UFC return after 2 years of being out. We'll be breaking this fight card down next in with friends. Another recap, not breakdown, excuse me, of UFC's Fight Night, Usman versus Buckley. Watched it a few hours ago. Let's bring it up on screen. I got some mixed feelings on this fight card, I'm being honest. I was very excited to watch these two fighters on screen in particular. But the fight card in general just left me thinking, I don't know what to say about the UFC really. But anyway, let's start as always at the top of the card with the main event of Kamaru Usman taking on Joaquin Buckley in his UFC return. And as you can see right there, he got fight of the night. I can understand why. If you think about a lot of the fights that did take place, particularly on the main card, this probably was the best fight on the night. Kamaru Usman out for 2 years, coming back against Joaquin Buckley, young stud, hungry, climbing up the ranks. I think Joaquin Buckley was ranked number 7 coming into this fight. Let's just double check that to make sure. Yes, he was. And Kamaru Usman was ranked number 5. And great fight, really great fight. I mean, I wanted Joaquin Buckley to win just because he's the newer blood, right? He's the newer breed. I'm not a fan of fighters that have tasted the gold, defended the gold, left it, coming back. I'm like, it's a good thing to see, like if they can do it, but usually they are unsuccessful in doing so. But Kamaru Usman looked amazing. I mean, he looked massive first and foremost. He looked really big for welterweight division. I mean, he made Joaquin Buckley look like he needed to. Like Joaquin Buckley was a lightweight, maybe even a featherweight in comparison to what Kamaru Usman looked like. Massive. I did feel, because I didn't do the recap with AD in this week, so you guys didn't know what my thoughts were, my picks were for the fight. Like I said, I wanted Joaquin Buckley to win. I just did think that Kamaru Usman was the more experienced, the better fighter overall, considering that he has been the champion for a while and beaten some good names. I didn't want to take too much of Kamaru Usman's last 30 fights, if I'm being honest, about like, oh, this is where he's at in his career. I do still think that he only has a little bit of time left. So going for the title, pulling out Islam Makhachev is a very smart decision for him, considering where he's at in his career right now. But okay, yeah, in terms of how the fight played out, I just think that Joaquin Buckley got exposed in the sense of these levels that he has to go through first, right? There's more that he has to learn. Because Kamaru Usman was basically taking him down at ball. Whenever Kamaru Usman would shoot, he landed the takedown. It worked for him. Joaquin Buckley couldn't really defend it the way that he wanted to. And Usman was going to work. He did what he did best. When they were standing, it was a lot more competitive. Right off the bat, when they were standing in the first round, you could see that Joaquin Buckley just wanted to strike with Kamaru. And Kamaru Usman could see this. And it was like, you don't even know that I'm going to take you down right now. Took him down in the first round, held him there. Took him down after the first 2 minutes of the round, and had 3 minutes to work with. Held Joaquin Buckley when down for that 3 minutes, landed some good elbows in that first round. Got in Joaquin Buckley open just above his eyelid. And then that was kind of the pattern of the fight. Because then the round started, Kamaru Usman would stand for a little bit, stand for the first 2 minutes of the round. As soon as he walked Joaquin Buckley down to that line in the octagon that makes the octagon shape, right? That's usually that 1 meter line before you get to the cage. As soon as Joaquin Buckley would enter that space, Kamaru Usman would shoot on him, get a takedown, and hold him there, top control, land some elbows, land some body work. The thing about Kamaru Usman that I don't really like, I never really liked this part of his game, was he didn't really finish. He never really finished athletes when they got to the grappling. His grappling is elite, but it's not the grappling that's going to put you in a submission, or it's going to put you in a very tough situation. He's just going to keep you there and beat you up there and just devastate you and make you feel like, oh, he's going to do this to me again and again and again. And again, it's a difficult thing to beat, but I just wish sometimes when Kamaru Usman has such a very, very elite and top-heavy wrestling game, if he could just add submissions to his game, he would be even more devastating, right? Obviously, later in Kamaru Usman's career, he started landing a lot more knockouts, letting those hands go. I think in this fight, he was a little bit wary. Because when they did stand, when they got into round 3, you could see Joaquin Buckley was starting to like really make it difficult for Kamaru Usman when they were standing. Body shots, good hooks, and Kamaru Usman didn't really like it. He defended some of them really well, good body head movement and good guard up there to protect himself from those shots. But I think it's safe to say that Joaquin Buckley was winning those striking exchanges, and then when Kamaru Usman would just shoot, would land the takedown, have Joaquin Buckley get nullified, and beat him up on the ground again. Round 4. I would go as far as to say that Madison won 4 rounds quite easily, actually. And then in the 5th round, when Joaquin Buckley really like let those gas tank go, he was hurting Kamaru Usman. He was actually hurting him there, and there was a few moments where Kamaru Usman was dazed, actually. I just think that Joaquin Buckley, if he had to defend those takedowns the way he did in the 5th round, a bit earlier in the fight, it would have been a bit more of a spectacle and a bit more competitive. But because he didn't defend those takedowns in rounds 1, 2, and 3, and round 4, he ultimately just got beaten up by someone that was just showcasing what levels Joaquin Buckley has to get to if he wants to compete at that level, right? As for Kamaru Usman, give him a round of applause for coming back. He was very emotional in his Octagon interview as well as the post-fight conference. Very emotional, but I think that's just because of the return, being out for so long. And to be quite fair, a lot of the UFC fan base wrote him off. Let's be honest, they wrote him off. They, discredited him, counted him out. He's not going to come back 38 years old. Got washed out, 3-fight losing streak. Not even counting in the context of those losses, by the way. Just like counted him out. Not going to be anything to sort of be afraid of when he comes back. But he came back and he took out a very good prospect. I do think Joaquin Buckley is going to climb the ranks again. I do believe that he's going to be a top welterweight contender and possibly go for a title. I don't know if he's going to be a champion, but I can definitely see him fight for a top contender's position. But then for Kamaru Usman, kind of reminded everybody what elite of a fighter he really is. Going in there, who does he fight next? So if I look at the rankings, let's actually bring that up on screen for y'all, so we can go through the rankings together. Pound for pound, there we go. So if we look at that welterweight rankings, right, where JDM is the champion, right, let's go there, Jack Della Maddalena. Kamaru Usman is ranked number 5, right, and he's calling out the winner between JDM and Islam Makhachev. So I can see them giving him that fight. My only issue with that is that fighters like Sean Brady and Shavkat Rakhmonov has done more than enough to solidify themselves for title contention after the JDM and Islam Makhachev fight. So either the UFC's got to put Sean Brady against Shavkat Rakhmonov and then give Kamaru Usman the winner between Jack Della Maddalena and Islam Makhachev, or you give Shavkat Rakhmonov Kamaru Usman, or the winner of Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev, and then give Kamaru Usman either Bilal Muhammad or Sean Brady. That's how I feel. I don't think that Kamaru Usman's his legacy in the UFC it can warrant him a title fight, but because he's been out for 2 years, the division has been moving, and the athletes have been doing a lot of work. Ian Machado, Gary, all these guys, they have been fighting. Carlos Prates, what's the other dude's name? Michael Morales. These guys have really been making moves in that welterweight division. I just think that Kamaru Usman is gonna, in my opinion, has to do another fight, and either it's gonna have to be Bilal Muhammad or it's gonna have to be Sean Brady or even Shavkat. Right? The only thing that makes me go, okay, let's give him that winner is because he's 38 years old. So you're only gonna get Kamaru Usman now, right? After this, his time's probably gonna be ticking even faster in terms of exiting his career. So I can, for that reason, I'll be like, okay, cool, let's give him the winner between JDM and Islam Makhachev. But deep down, I'm like, I don't think he deserves it. I think he needs to go through someone because if he gets the title shot, right, because now he's just going to have to wait after beating Joaquin Buckley, who isn't even in the top 5, right? So you're beating someone that's outside of the top 5, and now you want to sit for a title fight. Where Sean Brady had to fight 3 more times after losing against Bilal Muhammad to put himself in the position where he can now only be considered as a top contender. Shavkat Rakhmonov has been in the number 1 position for a long, long time. And then he fought Ian Gary and broke his toe, and poof, now we don't see him anymore. Or broke something, and now we don't see him anymore. So I don't think even bringing him down to number 3 was fair. I think they could have left him at number 2 or number 1, number 2, and Brady number 3. point I'm trying to make is that fighters like Brady, Shafkat, and Bilal Muhammad has done more than enough to warrant themselves a possible title fight as their next fight. So I think that's why, for that reason, why I think Kamaru Usman should fight one of those three first before going up against Islam Makhachev or Jack Della Maddalena. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can give me your thoughts in the comments about who and what you think about that welterweight match making. For now, I'm going to keep it moving to the co-main event, where we saw my girl, Rose Namajuan, taking on her training partner in Miranda Maverick. Let's just get that up on screen for you. This fight also went to decision, but it was a good fight. It was a really fun fight from the get-go. Miranda Maverick is a very good contender and a gamer. She's a fantastic gamer. I just think that she was outclassed by Rose in every way of the fight. Rose was the better striker. Even though it was a bit competitive, but Rose took the fight where it needed to go. If it went to the ground, it was because of Rose. If it was standing, this is because of Rose. She was navigating and dictating the pace of the fight, like a champion that she is. Let's get real. She's a two-time champion, and the fight kind of showcased that. Miranda Maverick is someone I'm going to remember just because she was a gamer in there. There was a moment in the fight where she was making it a bit competitive in the second round, but then Rose just popped her up with a straight left and dropped her. And I thought, oh, this is the end of Miranda Maverick here. But she fought back, and I think, no lie, that was the third round, actually. It was the third round. Just double check. It was reversals, knockdown. Yeah, it was the third round where she landed that stiff left and dropped Miranda Maverick. And it looked like Miranda Maverick actually hurt her knee in the process, but I do think the knockdown was actually legitimate knockdown. It wasn't that she hurt her knee and she fell. That knockdown really knocked her down, and it just stamped Rose's performance on the night. I thought she fought fabulously. She utilized some good kicks, some good boxing, but that's what you get from Rose, right? In fact, that knockdown was so quick that even the commentators, Paul Felder and Dominic Cruz, didn't even see it happen, and they were right there. That's how fast the knockdown actually happened. And I just thought that Rose did a fantastic job in the performance, and considering that she lost against Manon Fiorot, I think she beat Tracy Cortez in the last fight. So yeah, I was quite impressed by what we got from Rose and from Miranda Maverick to top it off there. Not much else really happened in the fight other than they were jostling for positions when they were on the ground. But that's what you get when you have two fighters that are regular training partners, right? They are regular training partners. So what will happen is that they know each other's ins and outs really well. And that's the kind of fight you're going to get when you have fighters that really know each other that well. And I thought Rose did a really good job in able to navigate that, because it's difficult to fight someone that you know ins and outs. I mean, just look at the fight between Ian Garry and Shavkat Rakhmonov. They train together quite frequently, so it was like you could see that either both guys were like, how do we actually exploit each other's weaknesses? You know, when we both know what we're gonna do to each other. It sometimes make for a boring fight. I'm not saying this fight was boring, but it can sometimes make for a boring fight. Whereas these ladies didn't really put on any boring fight among a fight card that wasn't that entertaining. These two ladies really put on a good performance for me. Which brings me to my next questions. Who do they fight next? So if we go to the women's flyweight division, where Valentina Shevchenko, the GOAT, is the champion. Rose Namajunas is ranked number 7. Right? I know that in the press conference, post-fight conference, she was calling out someone like Alexa Grasso, which I think that's actually a good fight to make, considering Alexa Grasso is now on a couple of 2-fight losing streak, I think, if I'm not mistaken. 2-fight losing streak. She also mentioned that she wanted to go for Vivian, but Vivian's got a fight apparently. I don't remember against who. And then Natalia Silva was the other fighter that was also calling out, but she was also making some good sense about Natalia Silva being a very, very tricky fighter to fight against. So I understand that Rose is very patient, because she was saying even though she might not get that fight against Natalia, she's also happy to go up against someone like Alexa Grasso, Eden Blanchfield, and even get a fight back against Manon Fiorot, who she lost against, by the way. So personally, I would say let's get Maycee Barber out of that rankings right now, because who knows when she's going to come back. And if she does come back, she's going to be able to make the octagon again. We don't know. So I'd say let's get her out of that rankings, drop her maybe down to number 8. And then I would say let's push up Rose and Jasmine Jasudavicius. We could even go to Jasmine versus Rose. That would also be a very, very good fight to watch, considering that Jasmine is on a fight streak right now. Rose is on a 2-fight streak right now. That would be a really good fight. And then Blanchfield, for me, I would say let's keep her against Alexa Grasso. She deserves that. And then I would say Natalia Silva can wait it out and get someone against get the fight between Valentina Shevchenko and Weili. If Shevchenko, whether Shevchenko wins or loses against Weili, I would still say that Natalia Silva is deserving of that title shot regardless. So I'd go Eden Blanchfield against Manon Ferro rematch. We have Jasmine Duvicius against, I don't know, she probably has to wait it out. And then we can do Rose versus Alexa Grasso. I would say that would be a great fight. Or Rose versus Jasmine. And Alexa Grasso just going to have to chill it out there. Eden Blanchfield versus Manon Ferro rematch. And then Natalia Silva versus Valentina Shevchenko for the title. Like that makes the most sense for me for that one. But okay, let's keep it moving. Middleweight bout, Edmund Shabazian took on Andre Petroski. Not that fascinating of a fight, if I'm being honest. I expected Edmund Shabazian to utilize the range and reach advantage to actually maybe get a stoppage. He didn't, unfortunately. And he also allowed Petroski back in the fight in the second round with those takedowns. I just think Edmund Shabazian is a super talent there. He's 27 years old. I think he could become something better if he's a little bit more of a killer instinct, because I think the fight was there for him to actually take it in terms of getting the stoppage. Petroski was fighting so defensively. I didn't think that he was actually going to do anything offensively to win the fight. Whereas Edmund Shabazian was piecing him up with good jabs, good boxing combinations, good kicks to the body, chopping down the body so much that he forced Petroski to block now. Petroski couldn't block anymore, because I think there was a moment in the second round where Edmund Shabazian blasted a body kick onto Petroski's left arm, and Petroski went down for that. He took a knee because his arm was giving in. He couldn't take it anymore. And then Edmund went on top and couldn't finish him. He even allowed Petroski back up and then didn't blast the body kick again. Like, what? You know he's damaged. You could see he can't take the kick anymore. He can't take it. Spam that shit. Spam that shit. You make him not want to get back up, but he allowed him to get back up, which I thought was very strange. And it made me just go, this is why people don't want to support him. You know, this is why people are giving Edmund Shabazian this sort of mixed feelings of like, he is that good, but then also he really isn't, because sometimes he just doesn't put the fighters away when it's there for the taking, right? Especially because his fight before this, he got a stoppage, a beautiful stoppage. You think he's going to ride the momentum, and then he doesn't. I want to also give props to Petroski for that reason, but not really, because Petroski isn't really like something to write home about, if I'm being honest. And he does the basics okay. He doesn't do anything where you can go watch out for this and watch out for that. He just does the overall basics of like good takedowns, good defense, some good boxing, some good fitness. But like, there isn't anything you can go, Petroski's gonna do this to you, so be careful that you can. Okay, watch out for that right hand, or watch out for that switch body kick. Nothing like that you can talk about Petroski, other than he's the kind of guy that will just stay there in the fight the whole time. And if you don't put him away, he's probably gonna steal the win from you, right? And that was the risk for Edmund, especially in that second round. But anyway, it was a performance that he won, and there was some signs of Edmund Shabazian. I was like, okay, there is still some signs there, but the only thing I think I can say that's good about him is that he's 27 years old, so there's still years of him where he can, you know, really, really like level up that game. And I think he doesn't have to do much leveling up really, other than just be more of a killer. You know what I mean? He's got good strikes. He's got really good strikes. I do think that he's in a division where he's not really going to make a title run, if I'm being honest. I do think that he probably consider going down to welterweight and then utilizing that range and reach advantage better in that division. I do think that the middleweight division is just way too stacked. So I'm not even going to go to who they should be fighting next. They're not even ranked. So yeah, but Edmund is something I would keep tabs on in the future. Right, then we're gonna move down to a fight that I spent more time on X while watching this fight, because the amount of sort of, I wouldn't say abuse, but the memes and the backlash that Cody Garbrandt was getting on X during this fight was just something to witness. Because yeah, dude, he has really gone washed out. He's gone from being someone who beat one of my favorite fighters of all time to becoming just someone that's taken losses after losses after losses. Just want to quickly see what his record is like now, his last couple of fights. So he's now lost to Barcelos. He's lost to Figueiredo. He's beaten Kelleher. Kelleher is a nobody. He's beaten Jones. a decision in 2023, and then he's gone on like losing streaks again. So yeah, he's just been losing the whole time. Even when he even went down to a flyweight division to do a little bit better, and didn't work out for him there either. So yeah, Cody Garbrandt at this point in his career, I don't know if we can consider him to be someone that's gonna climb any ranks again. His name and former champion status will always make him get a fight in the UFC, but I do believe at this point, Dana White and company really need to think about what they want to do with someone like Cody Garbrandt, because you're paying this guy to go out there, and he's just taking losses after losses the whole time. So I do think that if there is something they could use Cody for, that could be to maybe fight against prospects, someone that's coming up and someone that's entering that division, or someone that's, he could be a gatekeeper kind of fighter. But I even think he will lose in those kind of fights as well, because Raoni Barcelos is not even that fascinating. He's not even that good. He's okay, and he's all the gentleman. He does the basics really well, and he was actually beating Cody Garbrandt up. Cody Garbrandt started the fight house on fire at the end of the fight very early, but it didn't even do anything to Raoni Barcelos. Barcelos was just able to take those shots, block them, and he would go in there and consistently just blast takedown after takedown and weigh out the arms of Cody Garbrandt, landing his shots almost rock. He actually rocked Cody in towards the later rounds, and just won the fight on being the more active fighter and making Cody miss and landing all his attacks. And yeah, I do think he won the fight in unanimous decision. But yeah, the performance from Cody just left me going, this is absolutely boring and sad to see that someone of this stature, the former bantamweight champion, fighting like this. I was just like, come on, man. As for Barcelos, you can't fault the guy. He did what he was supposed to do. He game planned the way he game planned, and he won the fight in a very good fashion. I would have loved to see him knock Cody out and relax Indian Cody for real. But now that he won the fight on decision, it's like, I don't even know what's worse, getting knocked out or losing in that fashion where against someone that's not even really going to make a title run. It does put Cody in a very sticky position in the UFC. As for Raoni Barcelos, I think he's on a win streak right now. So hopefully he gets a better name. I mean, if I look at the bantamweight rankings, let's just go to those bantamweight rankings quickly. Here we go. If we look at where's Barcelos, his name, he's not even in the rankings. They'll probably give him one of these guys here. He's like 14 or 15, Vinicius Oliveira or Montel Jackson. Well, we get one of those guys, but I don't want to spend too much time on who you will get next, if I'm being honest. They're not that fascinating fighters. Then this fight that happened between Mansour Abdul Malik taking on Cody, we took on Cody Brundage. This fight left me thinking, what's up with the UFC really? Because I'm even surprised to see that they have the fight recorded as a unanimous decision win when the fight got stopped in the third round. So I don't even know why that's there. And also the stoppage should have been ruled out as a no contest, because they replayed it 1,000 times for everyone to see, and there was a clear headbutt. I don't care whether it was accidental or not. It was a headbutt that actually ended the fight. So you should actually stop it right there and be like, hold on, this fight shouldn't have gone any further than this, because the fighter literally got knocked out and got TKO'd by a headbutt, right? So before I even get to that, Mansour coming into the fight as this knockout specialist, 2 fights in the UFC, 2 knockouts, taking on Cody Brundage, who actually made the fight a bit of a dog fight, if I'm thinking about it. He was a little bit hesitant because of the power and size of Mansour. But when they got into the second round, Cody Brundage did actually put on the fight. He was a bit more frequent, landing a little bit better, actually. And there was moments where he did land on Mansour, and Mansour got a little bit tickled. He was like, you went on a bit of a stanky leg. And I just think that the performance from Mansour was a little bit flat until that third round, when they did let the fireworks go, because they both were so hesitant in that first 2 rounds. I was like, do something. And then in the third round, that's when the guys let it go. You can even see on screen here, it says round 3, time 36 seconds of the third, towards the end of the third round, unanimous decision. That doesn't even read right. If it says unanimous decision, there shouldn't even be a time, because it went all the way. So that tells you what's the confusion here of the UFC. So anyway, when they got to that third round, they were really slugging things out, and it was kind of going back and forth. I would say Mansour was slightly having the edge on the feet in that third round. And then he went into a sequence when he got Cody back up to the cage. he went into a sequence where he did a jumping knee, failed at the jumping knee, and then crashing with his head down like this, headbutting Cody Brundage, right? Cody Brundage dropped to his knees. He went down because of that knock, that head knock, the headbutt, dropping him to his knees. The referee sees this, and then he allows Mansoor to basically go down and finish the fight with a barrage of punches, pulling him off Cody. And then Cody's like, are you serious? Like, this dude like headbutt me. We see the replay. It was clear as day as a headbutt. I don't care if it was an accidental. The entry for me was a very amateur-like, and that's why the headbutts even happened. And then it resulted in the knockdown. And then, Mansoor finished the fight there. And even in that moment, after all the replays, all the commentators, everyone can see this was wrong. They still go and say Mansoor Malik wins the fight by TKO in the third round. It's like, what the hell happened? So I left a little bit of a weird taste in my mouth, and I didn't like it, and I just thought it was strange. Nothing against either of the fighters. I just think, like, what happened to the rules? What happened to the rules here? So I just think that they should actually rethink that, but I don't think anything's going to change just because no one really gives a shit about the two fighters anyway. And I also think they're fighting in a division where neither of these guys will ever come up against Dricus du Plessis. So, let's just keep it moving because I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about what went wrong there. As for Malik, you also can't say, oh, what a good performance, because for the first 2 rounds, both of these guys did absolutely nothing. And then only in the third round, they let the fireworks go. Dominic Cruz was like, oh, here we go. Here's the fight happening now. So what does that tell you? The guys did absolutely nothing for 10 minutes. All right, but we'll keep it moving to another fight that was also snooze fest between Alonzo Menifield taking on Umar Sy from France. This was light heavyweight bout. And I was shocked that Alonzo won the fight, by the way. He was on the back foot the whole freaking fight. He was getting pieced up every time. Whenever Alonzo did do something was when he was clinching up so he doesn't get any more punched in the face. Umar was literally doing what he wanted to do by tipping and low kicking and punching and tipping and low kicking, doing everything that he wanted to do, making Alonzo Menifield fight in a way that all he could do was waiting for a counter, then throw a right hand and miss, clinch, then come back. And I was like, come on, man, how you scored in the fight for Alonzo when he literally didn't do anything for 3 rounds? And even for Umar Sy, I thought being the bigger, faster guy, he could have gotten a knockout there if he really committed to his punches and let those hands go. He could have slept Alonzo because Alonzo was hitting air. He was too slow to even counter. So the mere fact that he actually won the fight on decision, that's why I was like, what the hell is going on with this fight card? What's going on with the judging and the refereeing here? It blew my mind, and I couldn't understand why they scored it for him. So I'm just going to, again, conclude it there with just weird judging. Look there, one take. The stats were literally in Sy's favor. Make that make sense. And it doesn't even stop there. Let me continue. So I'm going to conclude the episode here. Let me continue to another fight between Paul Craig and Rodolfo Balotto. Another fight where there was a deliberate legal move, by the way, and they make it a no contest. When Aljamain Sterling fought against Petr Yan, there was a deliberately legal move there as well. They didn't even hesitate to give the fight to Aljo, disqualifying Petr Yan, giving Aljo the title. This fight, okay, it was no title fight, but it doesn't mean there's less stakes. The guys are still fighting. They're still putting everything out there to climb for title contention. Rodolfo had Paul Craig onto the ground. He was winning the fight until that moment. Paul Craig throws an up kick a few times. Rodolfo dodges it, gets down to his knees to go and now do some ground and pound. And Paul Craig throws another up kick, this time knocking out Rodolfo, knocking him out, flattening him out. You can see he's KO'd. The referee can see he's KO'd by an illegal move. Stops the fight. They take some 5 minutes, 10 minutes to look at this and still make the fight a no contest. No, dude, that's a DQ. It's a deliberate illegal move. There's no accident in that. There's no, I didn't mean to upkick. I upkicked him. There was no, I didn't mean to do it. You meant to kick the guy. And you can't say, I didn't see his knees were on the ground. You could see that his knees were on the ground because Rodolfo went from standing up straight high, which was a further target for him to kick at, to coming down to his knees, which was a much shorter face to kick, and then kicked him. Shorter target to kick. So I just think that, the UFC should have, they must do something about this because that's not a no contest. That's the DQ every day of the week. Rodolfo wins the fight by a DQ. And yeah, I think if they want to run it back, let them run it back again. But I don't think they should run it back. This fight was scheduled before. It didn't happen. Now we did get it, and this happened. I think this fight is cursed. So it shouldn't happen. But anyway, before I conclude, there were some great fights on the prelims, but I didn't catch those fights, unfortunately. I did see a little bit of Michael Chiesa versus Court McGee, boring fight. Michael Chiesa won that fight, just punching air the whole time, and won the fight. Malcolm Malmaker, Malcolm. I said Malcolm Malmaker. I've been saying this guy's name the wrong. He must sleep the whole time. Malcolm Malmaker won the fight, knocking out Chris Martinho. Performance of the night, that was good for him. Jose Ochia won the fight by the second round KO as well, beating Cody Durden, who's also a very good fighter, by the way. Ricky Simone won. He beat Cameron Smotherman by unanimous decision. Full Row knocked out Ange Losa in the third round, and then Jamie Lynn North beat Vanessa by unanimous decision. So let me just give you a little bit of an overall rating on this fight card. I'm gonna go with a solid 4. The main card, all the fight cards in the decision. Only the top 2 fights were really entertaining. And then the prelims, obviously the prelims are the prelims. And other guys were saying on X that the prelims should have been the main card and the main card should have been the prelims because of how the fights ended. Look, I don't want to be like those typical current UFC fans that are just saying all the fights are boring because there's no stoppages. I don't believe in that. I think fights are entertaining regardless whether there's stoppages or not. But there are some snooze fests that are happening in the UFC lately, and the fight cards are becoming a little bit stale. Hopefully, next week's card is going to be a banger because of the headline. I mean, I can't wait for it, so you can stay tuned for that in the new week. We do our preview for Jamal Hill taking on Khalil Rountree. I definitely think that's going to be a banger of a fight because these guys are never in any boring fights. But it's going to be a fascinating card. I mean, Ignacio Bahamondes versus Rafael Fiziev, like, let's go. I think it's going to be a good fight card, so stay tuned for that. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. Went this far, again, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Catch myself and the rest of the panel in the new week when we do some new previews, new updates for all the news stories coming up for One Championship as well as UFC. But on that note, have a really good Father's Day for all the fathers out there. Have a good Sunday. And I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.